Good morning, everyone. My name is Travis Terry, and I'm the president of Capalino and the very lucky moderator of today's Future of New York discussion. I hope everyone is doing well, getting vaccinated, and want to thank everyone for joining as we learn more about tourism and future of tourism with my good friend Fred Dixon, the president, CEO of Nyc, New York City's official destination marketing organization and convention and visitors bureau. Fred, we really appreciate your time, taking the time today to talk to our audience. As you can imagine, there is a lot of interest in this subject matter. As many know, Capalino is the leading urban strategy firm in New York and recently announced the rebranding and expansion of our firm to include business and nonprofit strategy, supplementing our reputation as the foremost lobbying firm in the city. Every day, and frankly, most nights, we help our clients navigate New York business and the political landscape to launch new businesses, expand existing ones. We're dedicated to helping our clients attain long-term success through a host of professional services focused on strategic planning, lobbying, finance, sustainability, social impact, and real estate. Our team includes people with extensive experience running government agencies and leading major corporations who leverage that experience to help our clients succeed. Frankly, they're the smartest people I've ever met, and it is an honor and a privilege to work with them. The subject of tourism has been top of mind for our team and many of our clients as we rebound from the painful COVID pandemic. To help our clients, in fact, Capalino just released a white paper on our economic recovery, which can be found on our website, and even launched a theater and entertainment group to assist those most reliant upon the tourism economy. There's no question that the impact of COVID on tourism has been extreme. Broadway has been closed for a year. Families from all over the world can't visit their loved ones here in New York. Our beloved museums, sports stadiums, and music venues have been sadly shuttered. Restaurants have struggled, and so many hotels lay empty. The result has been a significant drop-off in the roughly 66 million visitors, $72 billion in economic impact, and 400,000 jobs and nearly $7 billion in local taxes that the tourist economy generates for New York annually. But look, as I say, the future of New York is always bright. Vaccines are going in the arms by the thousands an hour. The federal government, led by new President Biden, our great Senators Schumer and Gillibrand, and our thoughtful congressional delegation, has passed historic and so much needed economic stimulus package. Our stadiums and museums, for the first time, are starting to see visitors. Hopefully the Nets will actually win the championship this year, which would be kind of exciting. And we even had 3 really cool special guest visits by dolphins in the East River. So Fred, if you have a way to sort of activate the East River and start to get some more marine life, I'd love to hear it today. But perhaps the greatest reason for hope of our city is that New York has experiences you just can't get anywhere. It's why I want my kids growing up here. It's why my family lives here. It's why I'm so proud to be a longtime citizen of New York. I mean, come on. This is the place that hosted the Beatles 5 minutes away from where the Ramones got started and where Louis Armstrong lived. It's the first capital of the United States. We became the finance, media, arts and culture, and international relations capital of the world. We do have the best bagels and pizza. There's no question about that. And we're a place where Alexander Hamilton starred, not just on Wall Street, but also on Broadway and in different centuries. New York City is proudly a place where people marched and fought for civil rights, LGBT rights, and women's rights, and labor rights. And we are proudly the place that has been the starting place and the home for immigrant families from all over the world for nearly 400 years. These experiences are coming back. They are coming back. People around the world will crave them, and we will continue to be the most dynamic city in the world. Fortunately, and I say fortunately, we have the privilege of Fred's leadership at Nyc Company to help maximize the likelihood that not only that we come back quicker, but we come back better and fairer. Just a little bit of background on Fred. With over 23 years of experience in the travel industry, Fred has overall responsibility for developing and implementing New York City's tourism marketing and development strategy internationally, as well as in the domestic and business markets. Since joining NYC & Company in 2005, Fred has overseen an almost doubling of tourism in New York, which is extraordinary success as these economic returns help our city pay for schools, roads, healthcare, social services, all the things we care about. With a strategic focus on growing visitation and visitor spending, NYC & Company focused on emerging global markets, rapidly expanding the city's presence from 6 traditionally strong origin markets to 18 offices covering 25 countries in just over 2 years. With a network of sales, marketing, and press professionals in diverse feeder markets from Australia to the UK, China to Mexico, and India to Brazil, New York City remains at the forefront of inbound international tourism to the United States. Should also just say, just because he's not busy enough, Fred has served on the boards of the U.S. Travel Association, IPW Planning Committee, the National Tour Association, Tourism Cares, the Student and Youth Travel Association, and the Javits Center Operating Corporation. As we all know, the Javits Center is one of the most important economic generators, tourist attractors in the city. So today's webinar will last about an hour. Fred will give a 10 to 15 minute presentation on some new information that they're finding at NYC & Company. Then we're going to have a fun chat for about 30 minutes, and we'll save the last 15 minutes for questions from the audience. If you have questions, please post them in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Fred, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for taking the time today. We really appreciate it. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Travis. It is really, really great to be with you, and good morning, everyone. Travis, thank you for those kind words and for your partnership always. It's a real pleasure working with you, and my congratulations to you and your team on your recent expansion and the continued growth of Capalino. It's really wonderful to see that. And thank you for this opportunity to talk about my favorite topic, of course, tourism and the role it plays in our community, and what the road back is going to look like as we look to build our industry back and build it back better, as you said, Travis. So I think we can jump right into the presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through sort of where we've been, and then we're going to look ahead. And then that'll, I think, set us up well for the conversation to come with the questions and answers. But you know, there's no question, you know, the decimation, and there's no really other word that the travel industry has experienced over the last year here in New York, across the state of New York, around the country, and of course around the world. You know, we are finally, I think, realizing the importance of travel and tourism, not only in our day-to-day lives, but as an economic engine for communities both large and small. And that is certainly true here in New York. So the first slide that you'll see, the next slide rather, just talking a little bit about the power of hospitality. You know, there are always silver linings, of course, in every situation. And I think one of the things that we've taken away from this moment is that we're actually seeing what it's like when tourism goes away, right? I mean, you know, we have all complained about tourists standing in our way on the sidewalk and, you know, taking selfies and walking 3 abreast, you know, but they have a real impact on our community and an impact on our daily lives that perhaps, you know, has gone unnoticed in the past. And this past year, we've certainly had the opportunity to reflect on it. So 2019 was the culmination of 10 years of steady growth in travel here in New York City. 66 million visitors came here from around the world. That was an all-time high. They generated $72 billion in economic impact, and that was made up of $47.4 billion in direct spending at hotels and restaurants and small businesses and arts organizations across the 5 boroughs. It also generated $6.7 billion in local tax revenue. That's state and city. Almost $5 billion of that alone was city tax. And in a normal year, you know, tourism would save an average household in tax burden about $2,100. So we're seeing all of those pieces, you know, having gone away over the last year, and now we're going to be working to build them back. And of course, one of the most important components is the impact on unemployment. You know, we saw 403,000 jobs supported by travel and tourism in 2019, representing 9% of all employment, and that makes this industry the 9th largest in the city. So when things started to unravel, of course, in March of last year, and remember we were all saying, oh, this is going to be a couple of weeks, or it's going to be, a month or two. Of course, none of us really had the visibility on where it was going to go. But our leadership at Nyc Company and our board, both present and past, have experienced crisis before. So we put the band back together, as it were, and created the Coalition for New York City Hospitality and Tourism Recovery, pulling on our past chairs of our board. That includes Emily Rafferty and John Tisch and Tim Zagat, that came back into the fold to help lead these conversations. We tapped business leaders from across sectors, Ellen Futter and Thelma Golden from the arts and culture community, Danny Meyer, of course, speaking for restaurants. Lin-Manuel Miranda and his father, Luis, joined us to talk about the importance of neighborhoods, the importance of Broadway, and the importance of building back better. And then, of course, we were very pleased to have the support of the Hotel Trade Council with Peter Ward. And businesses large and small, bid organizations, chambers of commerce across the 5 boroughs joined us in this effort. And if you go to coalition.nycgo.com, or you can also type nycgo.com/recovery, you will actually see more detail on the coalition and its important work that's happening. So Nyc Company is leading the charge here, but the group actually represents a broader swath of the business community vested in the visitor economy. So next slide, if you would. The first thing that the coalition set itself out to do was really create a roadmap for how we're going to get this industry back on its feet, the spending, going again, bringing cash registers across the 5 boroughs and helping bring jobs back. And we published in July of last year the roadmap for tourism's reimagining and recovery. And you can see that on the website. And these are the goals of that document. Show New Yorkers and those in the greater region the way safely to connect with their city once again. And that really was important. And we've seen the importance of that even to this day, in that staycations, local spending are more important than ever. And as I often say, I use a lot of fishing analogies for some reason. It is about fishing where the fish are. And the fish are really right here in the 5 boroughs and the surrounding areas, because people have had limited ability to travel, but they also have the ability to support small businesses. And so turning New Yorkers inward to explore the 5 boroughs has been a key goal of ours. Also throughout this entire time is reminding the world that New York City is not only the greatest city, but it's also a safe place to visit from a public health perspective. And we all know and feel here in the 5 boroughs, the care and diligence that's been undertaken at every level to keep New Yorkers safe. I think we've done a remarkable job as a community, and that's a great sign to the world that we are protecting our residents, and we're also going to be protecting our visitors. So New York is going to be a safe place to visit. Getting them excited to visit New York again. And we stood up a number of virtual and social media content pieces that continue to run to keep our visitors engaged in New York and its brand, whether they live across the river, across the country, or around the world. Meeting and event organizers play an enormous role. And I know some of you probably on this call work in the meeting and event space. Restoring confidence in those meeting and event organizers and decision makers in New York is foundational for us. So not only for the immediate comeback, but also for the long term. And we've been still working and bidding on large pieces of business and events far out into the future. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Reinforcing New York City is one of the most diverse, inclusive, and welcoming cities. And with the incidences over the past year, that has never been more important, to celebrate what makes New York so special. And that is the diversity of its people, the inclusiveness of the city, and the fact that we welcome everyone. And we stood up a number of content pieces in support of that. And that is something that we will continue to push as a top priority. And then lastly, of course, putting the 400,000 employees back to work. Next slide, if you would. Now, how are we going to do this? The real opportunity, if you think about it, is best described as concentric circles. So right now we're in the New York City and region market, really talking to New Yorkers and people in the surrounding counties about beginning to return to the city. There's been a lot of conversation of course, about Broadway's return, and we'll dig in on that a little bit. But there are so many opportunities to explore the 5 boroughs today. Arts and cultural organizations, big and small, are open with time ticketing and limited entry. They're offering tremendous experiences. And of course, restaurants are doing an incredible job through the most difficult circumstances to stand up remarkable outdoor dining experiences across the 5 boroughs that really are offering something we really haven't had at this level before in sort of a cafe culture. So we're seeing that message resonating, and we're encouraging folks to, to come into the city. Of course, tomorrow, or this week rather, the quarantines will be lifted on coming inbound into New York State. We're going to keep a focus on safety, but that's going to give us the opportunity to begin to invite people in from further afield. And we're going to move into the drive market first as the next immediate opportunity. Then the larger domestic market. These are key source markets like California, Texas, Florida, and the Midwest, and then eventually global. And there's a lot of conversation about what's going to happen with international borders, at what level are they going to return. And I can tell you, I just saw this morning some early sentiment results from our trade partners. We've been surveying them throughout the crisis, and confidence is building every day. And people are abroad are ready to come back to New York. So keeping them engaged through virtual programming has been one of our key goals. And you see here a number of initiatives just referenced. Of course, visiting New York City virtually, we worked with the Department of Cultural Affairs and MoME, the film office, to create a curator series of great art exhibitions and entertainment online to keep visitors engaged in New York, whether they live here locally, of course, or around the world. Supporting our small businesses and dining in. We did a tremendous push throughout the year to promote ordering out and supporting your favorite restaurants. Shopping, of course, too, especially around the holidays. An entire initiative encouraging the world to shop NYC with a curated list of online retailers that sell New York City products and New York City retailers themselves. And then site visits, right? So as I said before, bidding for big events goes on. So we stood up a platform to actually do remote virtual site tours of hotels, venues, and attractions, so decision makers can continue down that process of making plans to bring events to New York in the future. Next slide, if you would. One of the coolest things actually has been engaging young people. And as you know, or you may not know, New York City actually is the #1 destination in the United States for student and youth travel. People think it's often Washington, D.C. They're a close second, but it's New York is the most popular destination for student groups. And keeping them engaged has been really important. So an entire platform was stood up for educators and for parents called NYC Virtual Field Trips to help them tap into all the educational resources that can be found online. Next slide. And you all felt this as much as anyone, I'm sure. The need to sort of rally New Yorkers last summer as we steadily march through this crisis. We needed to remind everyone that this is the greatest city in the world. We faced challenges before, and we will face challenges again, and we will come through this stronger. And so we launched All in New York City last summer as a rallying cry to support small businesses, to support your neighbors, to promote this great city in small ways and large, and remind the world that New York City is still the greatest place on earth, and that we will be again, and celebrate the spirit of our people in what has been a really difficult time. And we've had so many wonderful partners that have chimed in support and amplification of this effort, and we really want to thank them. Next slide, if you would. One of the underlying pins and foundational piers for all of this information, of course, is health safety. And last summer, at the same time, we stood up All in NYC, the Stay Well Pledge. This is a mutual commitment between the business community and the public, be that residents or visitors, that we each have a role to play in restoring, safe commerce and safe visitation. And so hundreds of businesses across the boroughs have taken this pledge and have joined us in this commitment. And you'll see this marker on restaurants and on hotels and retailers. We're going to do another big push as things open up this summer to remind visitors that they have a role to play in wearing their masks, keeping social distance, using contactless payment wherever possible, and the businesses are going to do the same to a mutual commitment. So that this is important, and we will continue this messaging, especially as the variants continue to circulate and as more and more people get vaccinated. This is going to be with us for some time. Next slide, if you would. Encouraging New Yorkers to explore, is sometimes one of the hardest pieces. No surprise, probably to a lot of folks on this call. Sometimes it's easier to get someone to go from London to visit Queens than it is to get someone from Brooklyn to go to Queens, if you know what I mean. So we really have worked hard to make sure that it's as easy as possible to find information about the 5 boroughs. So we've stood up countless itineraries that we've promoted through earned media and social media, and advertising to promote really, sort of day trips. And we've chunked them by subject matter, families or singles, by neighborhood, by content, and it's really been terrifically well received. So if you're looking for inspiration, go no further than nycgo.com to find it. Next slide, if you would. Now, stimulating that business, is harder and more complicated than just giving people itineraries. We actually need to give people offers. We need to point them in the right direction, especially as it relates to small businesses. So we launched last summer, and we continue to run all in NYC Neighborhood Getaways. And this is a platform with hundreds and hundreds of offers and promotions from small businesses to encourage you to patronize them. And thanks to our global payment partner, MasterCard, there actually has been a $100 statement credit that runs actually through the end of this month. So you still have a couple of days to use it to get out there and get statement credits back for supporting small businesses in New York. It's really been a terrific campaign, and MasterCard has been a wonderful partner. Next slide, if you would. Part of our commitment to building back better is to recognize that parts of our community have been more impacted than others, especially as it relates to COVID-19. Our Black and Brown citizens have been adversely impacted by the virus. And we recognize that we needed to go deeper and we need to go further in making sure that people understand the breadth and depth of the Black experience in New York and encourage folks to patronize Black-owned businesses. So thanks to our remarkable editorial team led by John Durbin and one of our newest members, Rondell Holder, they've created the Black Experience in NYC, which is a remarkable platform. I encourage you to go onto our website and explore it, showcasing the experiences that can be found to explore the entire African diaspora in New York. There's no place in the country where you can explore every aspect of the Black experience like you can in New York. And there's remarkable video content there. There are love letters to New York. And this is a permanent platform that we are going to continue to expand. Our next chapter will be the Latin experience, and we're moving into the Asian experience after that. So celebrating what makes New York great is what's important right now, and making sure that visitors know that when they come to New York, they can dive deep into communities. And so we want to make sure that we're supporting these businesses in these neighborhoods, but also that we're speaking to these travelers and that they know that they can explore New York and have experiences they can't find anywhere else. The next slide, if you would. Also in support of small businesses and, of course, building back better has been our commitment to the restaurant community. New York is not New York without its restaurants, especially the small neighborhood ones. And so we took our trademark Restaurant Week program, which is almost 25 years old now. And normally there's a fee to participate. Restaurants, participate in as a marketing co-op with us to be showcased. We took all the barriers down. We removed all of the fees. We opened it up to any restaurant that wanted to participate in the 5 boroughs at no cost with the special to-go edition in January and February. And it was a tremendous success in every way. So over 800 restaurants participated, $20.21 meals. Hopefully you took advantage of it. We're going to be doing this again in the summer to show love for restaurants and to help them, build back better. It's some of the most important work that we will do. Speaking of important work, next slide, it touches on a program that I'm really proud of. We're going into our 6th year of Tourism Ready. And this is a free academy that we offer. You don't have to be a member of Nyc Company because we are a membership organization at the end of the day. We make this free to businesses across the 5 boroughs to learn what tourism is all about. We have a team of educators that offer a year-long academy to learn the basics of tourism. What is a tour operator? What is a net rate? How do vouchers work for FIT travelers? How do I partner with a cultural in my neighborhood? And so this academy has been a tremendous success, and hundreds of businesses, mostly small ones, have come through this program, graduated, and created remarkable connections in building their business. There's so many wonderful stories here. What you see here is actually their graduation ceremony. So when they finish the program, we actually bring them together with travel buyers, so tour operators, travel sellers, travel agents, to learn about their products. And it's one of the most joyous days for us in the year because you see all these new connections and all this new business being built. And so we're standing that program back up this summer, again, free. And it's going to really focus on, of course, what it's going to take to build back in this new environment. So we're very proud of Tourism Ready and the pipeline it's created for businesses across the 5 boroughs. The next slide, if you would. Of course, I don't have to tell you all, the beating that New York has taken in the press across the country and around the world, some of that driven by politics, but whatever the situation is people love to write the obituary for New York. And we have undertaken this issue like we have so many others, whether it was after 9/11 or Hurricane Sandy or the economic downturn, to defend New York and to polish its image around the world. And so many media outlets have been terrific in standing up in support of New York City. And I want to acknowledge our press team and for the great work that they continue to do to push out positive news, both here and abroad. And I'm happy to tell you that, in the surveys that we're doing abroad, the image of New York is strong. The global travelers cannot wait to get back to New York. That's the great news. Domestically, we have a little bit more of an issue in polishing the image of New York because it gets caught up in politics sometimes. So Americans, as usual, have some of the most divided opinions, but the world, I'm proud to say, is still in love with New York. We're going to continue to polish this image and push it near and far. We also, next slide, if you would, we also are keeping engagement with our trade partners at a very high level. So this is just a glimpse of some of the online programming that we've been running throughout the crisis that we'll continue to run. These are sales missions where we're actually connecting New York businesses directly to buyers and influencers. We're educating the trade. Like a lot of your businesses, there's been so many connections that have been lost. So we're reconnecting, rewiring the machine of travel and tourism, making sure that the right buyers are connected with the right suppliers in New York. And this is really important work, showing them what's open, what our capacity limits are, and that New York is safe and welcoming as we build back. And then the next slide is something that we're going to be launching this week. You're getting a little bit of a sneak peek at it. And if you are in the corporate world, or if you're a member of an association, if you're a member of any group that holds meetings, this is a message for you. And the campaign that we're launching is called Meet Local NYC, Commit to the Comeback. And what we're asking influencers to do, whether you plan events directly or you attend events, is to encourage the decision makers to keep the meeting right here in New York. There's been a real temptation for a lot of event organizers to move, especially over the past many months, to places like Florida and Georgia and Texas, where there are fewer restrictions and where the market is wide open. And we've lost some business in New York to some of those destinations. Will we get it back? We certainly are going to do everything we can to make sure that they do come back, but we want to make sure they don't leave in the first place to other destinations. So if you're part of a meeting or an event, look out for this messaging, share it with the decision makers, and we're going to ask businesses across the 5 boroughs to embrace this and help us promote this idea of meeting local in New York. You can do it right here today, and capacity limits will continue to go up, we believe. And this is going to be a very important part of our recovery. Now, next slide, we're going to start looking at the numbers. And what you're going to see here is the outlook for visitation that we just shared with our board of directors last week. And this is analysis from the end of February. You may have seen some news coverage from our November outlook, but this is the latest picture of what's happening in tourism. So if you would just go to the next slide. These are just the last few slides, then we'll jump in with Travis. This is a snapshot of what we think visitation volume is going to look like. And there's some important takeaways here. You see the second column, of course, is 2019. Those were the record numbers. The dark orange bar is domestic, and the smaller light orange is international travelers. Now, international travelers, while they're only 20% of the volume on average, they represent 50% of the spending and 50% of the room nights because they stay longer and they explore more. So you see how far we fell in 2020. We fell to a third. Most of that visitation came in the first quarter before the lockdown. And then you see for 2021, the second half of this year, we expect to be incredibly positive. We think things are going to open up, and we expect to welcome back more than half of our record visitation before the end of December this year, 36.5 million visitors. International is going to be the slowest to recover. But as you can see, the trend go up. Then this is based on health issues, economics, employment, both here and around the world. So we feel strongly in the accuracy of these numbers. By 2024, we should be back in record territory from a volume perspective. And it will take a little longer to build out some of the segments, though. If you would, next slide. This is an example of what it's going to take, of what's going to take longer. Now, this looks almost like the same slide I just showed you, but the dark orange here is leisure travelers, and the light orange is business travelers. And you've heard a lot about this. Business travel is expected to recover much more slowly than leisure travel. Leisure is going to lead the recovery, especially as people reconnect with friends and relatives, and that's going to happen in a big way here in New York. But business travel, for a number of reasons, whether it's budget cutbacks, people working from home, questions around liability, we think business travel is going to have a tougher road in coming back, and that's both transient individual business travelers and group travelers. So it looks like you see 13.6 million in 2019. We're probably not going to hit that number by 25. So it's probably going to be 26 before that robust high spending business travel volume is back. And the next slide talks about international. So everyone wants to know what's going to happen with the international markets. We have our fingers crossed that there could be good development in the UK reopening, perhaps in June. That's our biggest market historically. But you see what you see here on the right side of the screen, that dotted line, that dotted vertical line up and down, it represents the 2019 volume. So the UK is projected to hit that number by the end of 24. But you see Canada will hit it in 23. And of course, Mexico, we think will hit it a little bit earlier in 24 at the bottom of the screen. Canada and Mexico should be our first and biggest opportunities, but UK is not far behind them. And then curiously, China has become a major player for us, and we think they also will play a major role in coming back sooner. And so we have a lot of expectations there. No surprise if you're reading the news, Brazil is struggling. France is struggling economically, and Germany is still a little bit of a question mark, but it should perform a little bit better than France. But this is what the road back for full international recovery looks like. But if you look at the orange bar, the dark orange bar, 52% of the Canadian market back this year. 60% of the Brazilian market back by the end of next year. So there are hopeful signs here, and we're always looking for the upside. And then the last slide is talking about hotel development. A lot of questions about what's happening with the hotel community, and it has been incredibly tough. I cannot underestimate or understate how difficult a time it has been for our hotel partners. You see here the record level of rooms that we had. If you look at the top numbers, 2019, we were right at 123,000 rooms. 2020 pre-pandemic, we had just hit 124,000 rooms. And then during the pandemic, we fell down. There's still about 200 hotels that are closed across the 5 boroughs, fell down to about 88,000 rooms in active inventory. But the good news is that the hotels are planning to reopen. You're going to see a number of major openings in April, May, and certainly in June, which is really exciting. And there are a number of new hotels that are actually coming online. Yes, there have been closures, marquee ones like the Roosevelt and others, but new properties are coming online that will take up some of that, some of that space. Some of those are, the new Virgin Hotel, the new Margaritaville Hotel, which is going to be, of course, focused on visitors, but also luxury properties like the new Amman that's coming to 57th and 5th, which is going to be one of the top luxury hotels in the world when it opens in just a few months here in New York. So there's good signs across the board. There are openings and reopenings coming to the boroughs as well. The hotel industry is resilient. They have an incredibly tough road. They have a lot of things working against them, but they are as committed as anyone, and we're going to be supporting them to get back up. So Travis, that is the top line on where we are today, and I'd love to take any questions.
Fred, thank you so much. I mean, that was really incredibly informative, and I'll tell you, it just made me more encouraged about where we're headed. And I should just say maybe those fishing references led to the dolphins. You never know. I mean, who else wants fish but dolphins? Anyway, Fred, I got a bunch of questions, and again, just want to encourage folks to post their questions on the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. I already see a bunch coming through, so I'm going to try to meld some of those together with about a minute. We could go on for hours, frankly. First question is on comeback. I think that there's really going to be two major there's a lot of major milestones for our comeback. One obviously is schools reopening, and that's going to play an important role in getting the city back to 100%. The second one is Broadway, and reopening Broadway in the theater district, because it's just a global sort of announcement of New York being back and a safe place to come back. Do you have any insights as to when that might happen?
Yeah, I can't, of course, speak for the league or for the producers directly, but I know they are incredibly hard at work in developing plans, both the city and the state, to stand Broadway up. And I think the expectations are wide, and I certainly share in them that we will see reopenings in the fall. September would be my hope. We could see some pop-ups and other things happening during the summer, but I think for the major shows, the time it takes to stand the shows back up, to recast and rehearse, and to give them the best chance, obviously, at survival, because once they open, we know even in good years, Broadway is not the best investment financially. The ability for them to open and stay open is going to come with the volume of visitors, and the best window for that is likely going to be in September.
Cool, thanks. So we're truly an international city. I think we have over 200 different languages that are spoken regularly here. I remember when we pursued the Olympics in the early 2000s, there was a stat that somehow like 98% of the countries were represented somehow in New York. A lot of those communities live in the non-Manhattan boroughs. And I was just curious, what you touched on it a little bit in your presentation, but I was wondering if you can go a little further in depth on the plans to really promote out of borough. I hate using the term out of borough because we're not out of borough, we're all 5 boroughs, but the non-Manhattan boroughs. What NYC and Company's plans are for that?
Absolutely, and that has been the secret to our success, right? I mean, we would not have the level of international visitation we have today, or 2019, if it weren't for the opportunities that exist outside of Manhattan. That is what is bringing back repeat international travelers. They're coming here for those depth of experiences. They're coming for Broadway for sure. They're coming for the Empire State Building, but they also want to go deeper into the community. And the international market really has been leading the way. So at NYC Company, for more than a decade, we have had a deep commitment to promoting the entire 5-borough experience. And whether that's through arts and culture or through restaurants, small businesses, tours, the Guides Association and the remarkable tour guides have been leading the way in this charge almost more than anyone, because you now have walking tours, culinary tours, historical tours in all 5 boroughs to explore neighborhoods and support small businesses that are truly wonderful to see. So you see in our programming, you see the emphasis on Restaurant Week, taking down barriers, making sure that there is no cost of entry barrier to participating in our programs. The Tourism Ready program has been almost entirely dedicated to areas outside of the core of Midtown Manhattan, and we've had the biggest participation in Brooklyn and in Queens, of course, because of the size of the communities, but Staten Island and the Bronx as well. And that is going to be something you're going to continue to see us push. I mean, that is the strength of this destination. There's no question, when the first time you come to New York, you go to Central Park, you go to the Empire State Building, you want to see the Statue of Liberty, you want to go to a Broadway show, and that will continue. So with tourism every year, the glass empties in December, at the end of December, right? And we have to fill it back up. So that is a mix of first-time visitors and repeat visitors. And it is the experiences of the boroughs that bring people back to New York. And that's going to be one of our greatest strengths in the recovery.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And if there are folks out here running businesses in non-Manhattan and even in Manhattan boroughs, please reach out to NYC Company, because there's a lot of ways in which we can all sort of work together.
Absolutely.
I want to spend a second on events. Events obviously attract a lot of attention, in a lot of ways, global attention. I was very excited as a soccer fan to see the rumors of the Champions League final possibly playing in New York. It's pretty amazing. That's an event that has 4 or 5 times more TV coverage than the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And it's Europe's baby. So the fact that thing in New York is incredible. But we have a lot of events that are once in a generation coming up. And those include, I believe, the 400th anniversary of New York City,
Yes.
the 250th anniversary of the United States of America, the 2020, I don't know why I keep going back to soccer, the 2026 World Cup. Hopefully a ticker tape parade for the Mets this year. Can you sort of share your thoughts on some of those events? Are we starting to plan? How does sort of NYC, what's the philosophy behind NYC and Company as they're sort of looking to pursue some of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because, some of the biggest optimism is in the confidence that the world continues to have in New York. So for more than 4 years now, we have led the bid for the 2026 World Cup. to come to New York and New Jersey, because the final match will likely be played in a stadium like MetLife. So it is a partnership with New Jersey, as we've had on many other events in the past, whether it was the Super Bowl or for soccer fans, the Copa Centenario that we did with CONCACAF, and the Latin American soccer leagues, which was a huge success. Got to go and experience it. It was just remarkable at MetLife a couple of years ago. But yeah, so the World Cup bid is underway. New York is one of the final 17 cities in the bidding process for the finals in 2026.
Yeah.
We're very confident that we're going to bring home the big game, the media center, and the fan fest, and that's what we've been pushing towards. But at the same time, 26 is going to be a huge year because, as you said, it is the 250th anniversary of the nation. So there will be a huge celebration. We're going to be working with the organizing committee. The governor's already established the state level organizing committee. There's a bunch of folks here locally that are already organizing for that anniversary. So that will all happen in the summer of 2026. You've got the World Cup, and you'll have, of course, the big events, which will likely happen in the harbor. I think tall ships and Statue of Liberty, with a series of events happening throughout the 5 boroughs to help celebrate the nation's anniversary in 26. And then the city also has its 400th anniversary in 24. So planning for that, while it's not as big an event, obviously, or nationwide, I think you'll see significant activities happening there. And we are working with partners, whether it's, local organizers like the US Open or, the Tribeca Film Festival, on creating new events and bigger events, in the years to come. I think there will be opportunities to look at bringing some of the major global events that are broadcast television, marquee names like the Grammys and others back to New York at the right moment. The real challenge there oftentimes comes down to budget, because where those events live normally, like LA for the Grammys, they have an incredible deal with free venue rental. And, LA was smart in cutting a deal with the Grammys. Of course, that's their home, when they redeveloped the entire downtown arena complex. And they did that in part with the Grammys in mind. So when they come to New York, it's just a more expensive proposition, but we find ways to help them make it work. And I think we're going to see lots of those opportunities in the near term.
Well, if anyone on the phone is connected to the Grammy, or on the Zoom call is connected to the Grammys, or know somebody, tell them that LA is not as much fun. Just come to New York.
As much fun.
Fred, I'm getting a number of questions because I want to actually talk about how in a lot of ways we rely on government, but I want to talk about businesses. But before we get into that, I got a couple questions on the chat here about federal government response, and love to get your take on that. I know that federal government came in with Save Our Stages, which was incredibly helpful. Obviously, the PPP loans are helpful. And there's now rumors of additional economic stimulus and infrastructure bill. And I was just curious to get if you have any insights on what else you think federal or state or local governments could be doing for things like that, as well as the governor the other day proposed a vaccine passport, which could be helpful. I'm just curious to get your thinking around that, and does that help sort of facilitate more tourism?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but certainly from the federal stimulus side, I mean, Save Our Stages, there's no question, was a remarkable effort, both for New York and the country, because it affects theaters large and small all across the U.S. The Restaurant Act, that has been pushed as well, is critical to support the small businesses in the restaurant community and make sure that they get stood back up. And I think we'll continue to see a push on some of that stimulus. The second round, I was just with some restaurateurs here in my neighborhood on Saturday night, and they said if it weren't for the second round of PPP, they would have already been closed. So, I mean, I think, it goes without saying, those pieces have been critical to businesses surviving. And then you mentioned, some of the other mechanics of travel, and certainly there's a lot of still unknowns around a vaccine passport or a health passport. The governor launched the Excelsior Pass. We're still learning a little bit more about it and how it's going to be used. In the international space, governments are standing up their own. IATA, if you know anything about IATA, the International Air Transport Association that represents the booking mechanism of airlines, they've created their own pass that they're recommending everyone adapt. So it's a little bit of a game right now of whose pass is going to get adopted. But that will come down to local, of course, and federal regulations. And I heard the Biden administration say yesterday they were not going to sort of pick one pass over another. But you know, I think it's going to be interesting to follow that and see where it goes. I think internationally, you're going to see a lot of governments require vaccines for travel. Certainly, negative testing that already is happening. But we're going to need some kind of single standard, and I think that's a space where government can help. And then we're, as you mentioned at the beginning, we're part of the U.S. Travel Association, the large industry group in Washington. And you know, there are a lot of conversations about creating some additional stimulus to support some of the worst hit sectors like business travel. There is conversation about a restaurant tax credit for business travelers. If you spend money on an expense account in a restaurant, you might be able to make a portion of that tax deductible. There's some really creative ideas that are out there that could stimulate travel and especially get businesses, you know, putting their road warriors and their colleagues on the road at the right time in a safe way. But it's going to take a lot of the stimulus, I think, in some of these efforts broadly to get this moving in the right direction.
I was going to say there's a few comments in the chat box too. I'll just put it out there about if there's ways to create additional stimulus for other tourist businesses like gift and souvenir stores, as well as historic monuments and buildings like Gracie Mansion, you know, and others that have been obviously hard hit because they don't have the visitor revenue coming in.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think, you know, we're not a lobbying organization, so we get out of our depth on top of that. We're not a policy shop. We're the marketers, but we have been flagging all of those issues for groups that do that important work. And we've certainly been carrying that to the U.S. Travel Association in Washington, and they have one of the best advocacy shops in town.
Okay.
To DC organizers. So if anyone has any specific ideas, you know, please feel free to reach out to myself or to you, Travis. Happy to work with you on that.
Absolutely. Based on the many Q&A questions I'm getting, I think I might get a few emails after this. That's great. This is exactly why we're doing this conversation. So, which leads me to my next question, which is, you know, how could businesses help you? I mean, I think that there's so many times when we have these conversations with our clients, we like to advocate and even complain a lot about government or quasi-government agencies, what they should be doing. But the business community, even the nonprofit community, has a role, particularly the arts and culture community, also has a real desire and passion of teaming up, partnering, and helping in so many ways. So I was just curious what advice you might have for folks to help you succeed. Obviously, your success is good for all of us. And any insights you can provide there.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, we are all in this together. I mean, there's no other way to really say it. And, you know, much of what we're battling, look, you know, the surveys that we're doing right now are showing people love New York. People like to complain, but they love New York, right? And the surveys are confirming that there is no place like New York. And people recognize that. So what we have to do, and this may sound silly because it's such a simple idea, but this is what we endeavor to do every day, is to create FOMO, right? The idea that the fear of missing out. We have to show the world that New York is getting back on its feet, and we have to do that in a safe way. We can't be irresponsible. We can't, you know, have what happened in places like Miami and other places happen here, because that's going to undermine us. We have to be cautious and thoughtful about it. But we have to create vibrancy. We have to show the world that New York is back on its feet. You know, as I said before, everyone is anxious to write the obituary of the champ, and New York is the champ, and that is something that we have dealt with in the past, and it comes with being the most popular destination in so many ways, and so you take it on the chin and you just keep going. So, you know, I think if you have an audience, if you have following online, whether you're directly in the travel and tourism space or not, promote New York. You know, you can engage in our programming. You can get behind our brand, which is NYC. You can get behind the governor's brand, which is New York Tough. But say something, and jump in, and give a vote of confidence for your favorite restaurants, your neighborhoods, and for our city overall. That's a very simple, easy thing for people to do. And then continue to advocate, as Travis, you just laid out, for government support for small businesses. Because without our small businesses, I hate to think of New York on the other side of this, without the flavor that the small business community brings. So those are just two simple ideas. Follow us, if you will, in social media at NYC Go. We also have at NYC Go _press, which is our press channel. If you want to follow our messaging and you can amplify that, but follow what we're doing, repost, if you have any ideas, please bring them to us through Travis and we'll be happy to do it. But this is one of those moments where we have to rally around New York and the destination and show as much the American audience as the international. The international audience, according to all of our research, is 1,000% behind New York. It's the domestic audience where we have the biggest challenges in certain ways, and they're 80% of our volume. So anything you can do to help rally around that flag, please do.
We'll do. And I would just say, and Fred, I know you're not a lobbying organization, but I would just say to the people in the meeting, we do have an election coming up. We're going to have an entirely new government next year, almost entirely new government. And just really would encourage people to raise these issues with folks running for office on all levels. The importance of boosting tourism, importance of small businesses, the importance of our, historic and event places, really important to keep amplifying that in every venue you possibly can. One area that's getting a lot of comments too, Fred, I want to touch upon is parks and public spaces. The city of New York has obviously created a lot of plazas over the last couple decades. Those are places that people want to visit and join. And can you just talk a little bit about how, again, getting back to sort of the 5-borough theme, how NYC and Company is sort of elevating those, reminding people to visit those, what we're doing to support those efforts.
Yeah, our parks are our gyms in every way. And the research is also showing this, that people, when they travel, are most comfortable doing it in outdoor destinations. That's one of the things that we've been tracking very closely. Searches right now are predominantly, for travel domestically, are predominantly for mountain destinations, rural areas, and beaches. That's where people are thinking about going right now. And so we have to make urban destinations as attractive, particularly here in the Northeast, where the population is generally more reluctant and more cautious. So our drive market is going to be a particular challenge in that way. But our urban spaces are something that we have always promoted and that we will continue to promote, particularly green spaces in New York. And that's going to be a big part of our content going forward, coming to New York and getting out and exploring, whether that's the beaches in the Rockaway, whether that is, our wonderful city parks in all 5 boroughs, and our waterfronts are really going to be important for us, especially as we move into the summer, as real draws for people as they get accustomed to getting back out again, and as they get accustomed to being around other people. For us in the Northeast, it's been a bit of a jolt, to get back to some of this normality. Other parts of the country, they act like nothing's wrong or nothing's ever happened. So for us in New York, I think our outdoor spaces are going to be a real treasure right now. It's wonderful to see the expansion of the city bike program, because I think that too is going to feed into this. And also, the open streets program with restaurants. I can't stress, the role that they're going to play in the city's comeback. People want to come here to be part of that cafe culture that New York is standing up right now. And I hope we have a good bit of that going forward in the future.
Thank you. And another way companies could help is to hire New Yorkers. And I just was curious to know, I think we have a few students also on the line. What do you have any advice for someone who wants to get into the tour? I know the tourism industry is huge, or the event industry is huge. But do you have any advice for folks on how what they should be doing to prepare themselves for a career in tourism?
Yeah, absolutely. There is no better place to begin a career in hospitality and tourism than right here in New York. I came up in the hotel business. But I also worked in attractions, and I worked in restaurants. I worked for Delta Airlines for a moment. I was very lucky to have opportunities across the entire spectrum of travel, which gave me, a good purview. But for young people or people of any age that maybe are looking to change careers, hospitality and tourism offers a remarkable track. It's a fun industry to work in, but there are rewarding careers. Hotel companies especially have great management training programs. We work closely with the high schools. There are high schools dedicated in the 5 boroughs to restaurant management, into hotel management, into hospitality. We work closely with them. We also work closely with CUNY. And so hiring local, it should be a priority for all of us as we build back. Pre-COVID, our partners in business, whether they be hotels or restaurants even, they had a tough time sometimes hiring locally. You saw hotels oftentimes go outside the 5 boroughs to find the right talent. That should not be the case. We should be able to hire our young people to represent the city and to be the faces, in the minds behind hospitality and tourism. And our industry has not been a very diverse one in the past. And that's something we're working on. And we want to make sure that there are opportunities for everyone as we build back. And that the hospitality industry itself reflects the population of New York. That's a key. That should be a key goal for all of us.
That's great. Great. Thank you. I know we're running up at 12, but I want to ask one more question before we leave, which is around technology. And we're just seeing this massive boost in technology, and I'll tell you, my kids live on these TikToks and Snapchats. And, I don't know, they make fun of me all the time. But how is NYC and company sort of utilizing technology and social media to help continue to sort of market and promote the city and all of its attractions and events?
Yeah, I mean, social media has been, part of the backbone of our messaging from the very beginning. And, even in markets like China, our Weibo account, for example, is a tremendous following. In fact, it's the most engaged destination social media channel in China, I'm proud to say. But it is key. The world has changed. The way people communicate has changed. Social media is really important. And I'm not an expert. I'm still trying to figure out TikTok myself, Travis. I don't know. I don't know if you're.
I keep telling my daughter that if she doesn't behave, I'm going to get on TikTok.
That should work, because you and I both would probably look like a fool on TikTok.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, it's never been more important. And I think, moving beyond social media, I think coming out of this, what we're seeing, is a real quantum leap in technology, and finally we're beginning to see, restaurants adapt that little card reader that they bring to your table, like you see when you travel abroad. We were behind the curve in the US in many ways. And a lot of that contactless payment now is in place. Time ticketing, especially for our attractions, is creating an incredible experience for people. It's managing crowds in new ways. If you've not gone to a museum lately, it's one of the safest places you can be in New York. And they have done it so incredibly well. Especially go midweek if you get a chance to break away, take an afternoon off, and go online and book a ticket to go to one of our great arts organizations. You won't regret it. But technology is going to change so much of what we do, and I think you're going to see great New York companies like Clear continue to do great work in face recognition and in other ways to stand us up. And I think we're only beginning to see the start of it.
That's great. I'm actually hoping to take a day off this week and take my 7-year-old to the Bronx Zoo.
There you
It's
go.
his favorite place in the world.
Perfect.
Okay, so we're sort of at the end. I know there's a lot of other questions, Fred, that we could ask you all day long. I just wanted to continue to implore people to look at NYC & Company's website, to look at all their offerings, to offer to help, to do exactly what Fred did and use every possible channel you can to tell people that the greatness of New York, remind people that the obituaries are ridiculous. They are just ridiculous. This is the greatest place in the world. There's no better place to visit. I feel so fortunate both to work here, to live here, to raise a family here, and also, frankly, to have the opportunity to have these conversations because they're just so important to Capalino and to our clients. Like I said, we can go on for hours on this, but I do want to thank you. It's really kind of you to take some time. I know you're busy focusing on getting people back to New York and supporting all these businesses that have been suffering so much. And just know you always have a friend here in any possible way to help support your efforts. So Fred, again, thank you. I do want to just remind the audience that we do have 3 more Future of New York events scheduled and have a bunch of others in the works. We are also always looking for ideas. So if folks have ideas for conversations we could have, we do like to get in depth on things, please let me know. On next Thursday, April 8th, we were going to host Melvin Miller, who's the CEO, good friend of the Association for a Better New York, and Jose Ortiz, who's the CEO of the New York City Employment and Training Coalition, to talk about what New York can do to speed the city's recovery and inclusive growth. Also want to spend some time on workforce development. We touched a little bit today on hiring in New York. We want to provide those channels to make sure that your companies know where they can find great New York talent. On Tuesday, April 13th, we're going to host Lillian Barrios Paoli, who's a senior advisor at Hunter College, former deputy mayor for Health and Human Services, chair of NYC Health and Hospital Board, commissioner of aging, and probably the most experienced person in government, outside of government, I've ever met. She's got a lot of really great insights. We're going to talk a lot about modernizing the social service sector, and obviously she's got some policy thoughts around how, from a healthcare perspective, we come back. And then finally, on Wednesday, April 21st, my colleague Rich Castle, who oversees our sustainability group and clean energy group, is going to host Donnell Baird, the CEO of Block Power, for a robust discussion on the future of clean energy. The link to register, by the way, is listed in the chat. Of course, please visit our website, Capalino+Company. I'm sorry, Capalino.com, to sign up for updates and learn how you can continue to learn about these events and ideas on how to provide an inclusive and sustainable business growth. Fred, you're the best. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you taking the time again. I learned so much. I hope that our audience did too. I can't imagine they didn't. I suspect, based on, we've had well over 150 people in the audience today. I got a huge number of questions, so I suspect you'll be getting a lot of phone calls and emails over the next couple of days, which I hope you don't mind. But it's all in the spirit of helping you become successful. And thank you for all of your advocacy on behalf of the city of New York. It's a great help. I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you, Travis. I really appreciate your friendship and your support. And look, the tourism's recovery is certain. It's just going to be gradual. And we'll do this all together. And we're happy to answer any questions. And we'll make sure and share the link for folks to subscribe to our newsletter, which answers a lot of these questions on sort of a weekly basis. We'll get that link to you so you can push it out.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you. Be well. I hope you're getting vaccinated. And the light is at the end of the tunnel. So best of luck to everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.